Hi everyone, and welcome to SPED Homeschool Conversations. We are glad that you are joining us. If you're joining us on the recorded session of this broadcast, or if you're watching with us live, which is very exciting because then you can be part of our conversation. And this month in July, we are focusing once again on our community stories like we did last year. We call it SPED Homeschool Awareness Month. And so tonight we have Neches Phelps. Welcome, Neches.
Hi, thank you.
We're so glad that you're here because you have a very unique story, and I am excited for our community to learn more about it if they haven't met you already on our Mom's Night Out or in our support group, because I know you're active in both of those, and so that's an awesome way to get connected with us if you're not connected in those places yet. But so we're just going to talk about your homeschooling journey tonight, and just what you've kind of learned along the way, advice you have for parents, and just things you're still learning. You know, we all are, aren't we?
Yes, for sure.
So yeah, we never quite arrive.
Right. I remember, just driving my big kid to school and listening to the podcast on the way, so that I could learn how to homeschool my younger son. And now I'm really excited to be on the other side of that and feel like I have things to share with people who may be wondering, just how am I supposed to do this? Yes,
right.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and each of our stories are so different. I mean, and that's one of the wonderful things. I mean, it's nice to read, you go to a blogger site or somebody who's homeschooled one or two children, and what our organization is about is pulling all those together, because there's so many lessons to learn from every single person, just like you. And you learn them in the trenches.
Yes.
You don't learn them so much from a book.
No, I wish it was that easy. I really do wish that. Like one of the things that I had noted was that my homeschool is not that, sit down and read a story with your child and just sit in this beautiful, wonderful storybook like world. I see so many bloggers that have these beautiful pictures of them sitting down with their children and they're all reading together. And my homeschool does not look like that. And and so when I was reflecting on what I was going to say, I mean, that was one of the big things, is that truly, like, my homeschool, I think, is much more of a tornado. Like, it's just,
right.
It is high intensity. It does not in any way, shape, or form resemble the storybook world. I think.
World.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why our family went to unit studies, because I tried that storybook thing and my kids were running around all over the place, and I went, no, this isn't going to happen.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. And so the title of this broadcast tonight is Embracing the Homeschool Inclusion Tornado. And so Neches is going to share a lot about what that looks like in her home, how she's learned to embrace that, especially with COVID. I know you're going to share a little bit about how your hand got forced with that. But as we're getting started, can you tell us a little bit of your background, and was homeschooling really your first choice for all your kids, for one, and how did that kind of morph as the years went on?
Okay. So my background is in Catholic education. I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through college, really. And then I went back and I actually taught at the middle school that I went to. And then I was a middle school teacher, 5th grade teacher. And then I went into administration. And then I left administration to have my first baby boy. And homeschool was not our first choice. I know, like, my husband, he definitely wanted the kids to go to public school. I definitely wanted the kids to go to Catholic school. We knew, though, that we weren't going to be able to afford Catholic school, most likely, with me being home. And so homeschool was on the table. But when my oldest son got his diagnosis of autism, it was like school wasn't even on our minds. It was just therapy, early intervention, getting him to, where he needed to be, speech, OT, ABA. Yeah. It was just, it was that whirlwind.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's, and then I guess when I was, so I live in the greater Houston area on the outskirts of it. And a lot of things are on the opposite side of town. And so it takes a good hour to get there, at least like when he was little and needed those services. They were a little bit further away. And so I was on the road a lot. And around that time, I also had my younger son. And so he was about 6 months old, and we were traveling an hour to take Big Brother to therapy and then an hour back. And it just got to be too much. And then it wasn't, then the therapies that we were getting for him, it just didn't seem like, it was like they would help him for a little while, and then he would get to the point to where it didn't mesh anymore. And so then we decided, okay, we were going to try public school around the time that I had my third child, my daughter, and we were just going to stay close to home. We're going to raise the kids at home, not raising the kids on the road anymore.
Right.
Because what was happening is I would have my older son in therapy, and then my younger son and I would hang out at a local library or in the car, or we would find something because we wouldn't want to come all the way back home just to go all the way back.
Exactly. Yeah.
The drive was just too much.
Yeah.
So that's what we chose for our family. When we enrolled our older son in public school, kindergarten, the main goal for us was language. That was our big push. And we had heard that the public schools were really good about getting the kids started with an iPad and AAC and so forth. And so that was our primary goal. And it was around that time that our younger son got his diagnosis of autism as well. And so we put him then in PPCD and we decided on that road for the boys. And then I would say that went really well for my younger son. He had some fabulous years in public school with some great educators and administrators. And he was on the cusp, I would say, of being a full gen ed kid. And so it was, but the issue that he would have is that special education would say, no, he belongs in gen ed. Gen ed would say, no, he belongs in special ed. And it was this constant tug of war that he was beginning to feel. And then he didn't want to be where he wasn't wanted. Like, kids know.
Right. Yeah, they do.
And so that was his struggle. And it seemed that so long as he got a teacher who had a good, strong special ed background in that was his gen ed teacher, that he would be successful.
Right.
But then
they
the
knew
second,
enough.
yes.
Yeah.
And then the next year he would get a teacher who didn't have the training, and then he wouldn't be successful. And then all of the supports that he had the previous year had already been faded. And so I would have to advocate to try to get them back.
And then you'd have to do it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was this seesaw every year. And then finally I just said, like, we had a negative experience. And then I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm tired.
It wears you out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I don't want to do it anymore. And at the time he was in a year-round charter school, and he was at a 3-week break. And my husband said, what do we do? And I remember I was on the phone and we were in tears, and he was just like, what do we do? And I said, we homeschool. And it said, we've got 3 weeks to figure out if this is going to work.
I remember that
and
when you hit that point.
Yes. And so that's what we did. I think I downloaded some sample curricula, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go for it. And that's what I did. And then for those 3 weeks, I tried some different things that I thought I was going to like. I had friends who had extra stuff and they wanted to get rid of some things. They cleaned out a closet, gave me some things. I mean, it was just, when I told people this is what I was doing, then people were just like, oh, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And it's like, okay, great. This is what we're going to use.
Yeah.
And it went really well. And I would say with him and my daughter preschooling, or homeschool preschool, my daughter, it was much more storybook land. Like it was calm and peaceful, and it was everything that we had wanted. Like it thought about what homeschool would be like. They became best friends. They were bonding before then. It was beautiful though to watch them become best friends, because of course, being home or homeschooling, one of the biggest objections I hear is, what about that social component for our special needs kids?
Yes, it's so misunderstood.
Yes. And I think too that for homeschooling a child with special needs, you do, I think, have a tendency to become more isolated if you don't like make a point of getting out there and advocating for your children in the community and with your friends, and just letting them know, like, hey, it's okay. Things are going to be a little bit different, but it's fine.
Exactly.
And it was going really well. And I remember something Temple Grandin said, and she talks about socialization for our kids on the spectrum, and finding clubs and common interest, and that's where they're going to socialize. And so my little guy, he loves stage shows, like musicals, concerts. He loves stage shows.
Wow.
And that's not really a niche for little boys and public school.
Not.
You don't find it very much. You don't find it very much anywhere. And that summer, somebody was sponsoring a special needs theater camp. And it would have conflicted with the beginning of school. And since he wasn't in school, it wasn't an issue for us. And so I put him in this camp, and he loved it. And he was center stage and thoroughly enjoyed it. And now he's in the River program here with Tuts in Houston. And it feeds right into main stage productions. He's gotten to audition. Wow. I mean, it's been amazing for him. And that's where he gets a lot of that socialization from, and he loves it. And
it's in an area where he shines.
Yes.
And so that helps those barriers, or the places where our kids struggle, and and you see this, they can overcome those when they're in places where they feel so excited and so this is my thing, that I will push myself, and they do. They push those places.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've seen so much growth.
Yes. And, and something that I wasn't expecting was the growth that I would see in reading, because of the fluency that he would have to achieve.
Yes.
And then also he decided he wanted to sing in the church choir. And so even then, you need a certain amount of fluency to be able to sing. And it was, or just to like read the music, right? And he's done so well. So well. We are so incredibly proud.
That's awesome. And and just out of let's try this for 3 weeks.
Yes.
This is where it's taken us. And just that leap, that just taking that step and saying, let's see where it'll go, and using just whatever you have. I love that you don't have to have some grandiose plan, because I'm sure you're going to share a little bit about just how sometimes the best things that happen are those things that just happen, and they lead us down rabbit trails, just like you found with your son with theater. It will open doors that we can't plan for them.
Right. Yes, I have found that to be very true. Very true.
Yeah, and I love the relationship aspect too that you talk about at home, because we think of socialization as happening only between same age children, and yet with their siblings, I mean, who do you want to get along with best? Those people in your house.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure how is he doing as far as, socializing with the other kids in the program too, and the adults, and, is that stretching him in his social skills?
Right now I'm seeing it virtually because I wasn't able to attend with him previously, but now that I am, now he's doing it virtually, and it's, the Zoom classroom is new to everybody.
Oh, I know.
So
yes, exactly.
So it's a bit of a stretch, but one of the things that I've seen is that he'll advocate for his sister. And so his sister is more or less there as just kind of little sister, volunteer. She just kind of walks in and participates, and then she can freely walk out. She's not, a participant.
Right.
But today we started a new class. So she had a new teacher, and this teacher didn't ask her what her name was, and she was so upset, and so she walked away. She was upset, and then at the end, I told her, I said, "Look, go tell the teacher your name. You can do that." And so she walked back in and she raised her hand, just about, like this, and he told his teacher. His teacher said, "Is everybody doing okay?" And he said, "No, she's not okay. She has a question." And so him just being able to advocate for his sister, and that's what I saw. And then also, if they're going to start and maybe not everybody has arrived in the Zoom yet, he'll notice and he'll say, "Oh, wait, we need to wait for such and so or whomever, and such and so is not here yet," and and he'll say hi and bye. And I haven't seen many relationships, I would say, develop as of yet, but I've seen that the older kids in the program are really, really close, and so I think that over a period of time, it'll come.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard from multiple parents that when their kids are in those Zoom rooms, when they have autism, that their peers actually see them better because they don't see them stimming under the table, and all these other things that they do. But yet they see their competence coming out and doing things like you're talking about, and so it allows their best part to shine. And so that's kind of neat. But we have a couple guests who said, one said good morning, so I'm assuming you're on the other side of the world because it's evening for us here in Houston, Texas. And then we have another guest saying, "Hi, nice layout." Yep, well, this is our SPED Homeschool Conversations layout. Now that I have the word conversation spelt the right way. I did for the longest time. Missing the I, sorry, that's me being real. But so you started with your youngest son.
Yes.
And you added your daughter in just because she was there. That's kind of what happens with those kids. And now your oldest was still in school, but when COVID happened, how did that all change in your life?
Okay. So I will rewind just a little bit. And say, so my older son, he was in public school. And then right around the time where we started homeschooling my youngest son, we decided to move him to an ABA clinic. The public school he was at was, I'm going to say, lost. They didn't know what that next step was going to be. They hadn't yet gotten him started with a device or Proloquo or communication was essentially the same. There hadn't been any progress, really. He wasn't reading yet. He was going into 5th grade. It was just, we were at the point to where we had sat down and said, do we like the way that this is going, or do we want to try a different path?
Right.
And so we decided, no, we're going to try something different.
I love it. That word try is so in your vocabulary. I want to just to point that out to you parents, because this is what makes you successful, is you're willing to try. You're willing to test it out. If it fails, it wasn't what's meant to work. Okay, continue.
Yes.
I love that.
And so we tried an ABA provider that was about 25 minutes away. And that was the perfect distance, and it went so well there. It was, I'm going to say, the very first provider who just kind of instinctually just understood how to teach him and how to help him get his needs met. They got him started with Proloquo. He was successful within a few months. He took to it, and it was just so wonderful, and to watch him develop and grow. And we had a good, 6 months of peace, I would say, because right around after that 6 months, our provider got into a legal dispute with our insurance company. And then and then everybody who had that insurance provider got pushed out. But while that was happening, they trained me in how to work with him. Right. And I want to say I may have had at least 4 full days of training that they gave me up there, just watching, observing, asking questions, going out into the community, learning how to use the device. I mean, it was really quality training for me. And so I knew what I wanted to see when we went to another provider.
Right.
And so from there, we decided to go with in-home therapy versus putting him back in school. And it just wasn't the in-home ABA just wasn't what I was looking for. There were just a lot of gaps and things. It just wasn't a good fit. And then when COVID happened, I canceled in-home, and so we were all just home. And
that's the way it was.
Yes. And so it was, we had about 2 weeks there, I want to say, where it was just, what are we going to do? And I had some things that I just had around previously from times where I had wanted to work with him after school or try something over the summer. And then also around that time, at the beginning of COVID, everybody seemed to be coming out with like webinars or virtual field trips or all of these new and interesting things to do virtually.
Right, exactly.
Or try my program for 90 days or whatever it was.
Right.
And so I would go to a webinar, I would subscribe, I would get the free trial, download, and I was like, all right, we're just going to try it. We're just going to try it and see where it goes.
Yes. Yeah.
And so then I got my kids all in our little, I switched the therapy room, then became the homeschool room. I was like, all right, we're just going to try this. And so I had all the 3 kids lined up in front of me, and we were going to do this little curricula that I had found, and we were going to do it exactly the way they said that it was to be done.
It's supposed to be done.
and it worked. Like, it worked. And that's
awesome.
That was the surprise, is
right.
It worked. And we were still doing speech and OT virtually. And I was so I had our speech therapist on the other side, giving me that support, because it was an AAC curriculum. And I was like, okay, we're doing this and this and this, and I don't know what I'm doing with this, but I'm trying this, and he just started responding. And so then he started getting sight words, and now he's starting to recognize that different sounds go together. We're starting to put together words, and it's just things that I didn't know that he could do, that we had been trying to figure out how to help him to do these things. It was, the magic started happening right in front of me. And
wow,
that was, and if it weren't for COVID, you
don't
think
have probably pushed yourself to that point. Right.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think a lot of families are finding themselves in new and interesting educational dilemmas and trials, but it's the trying again. Coming back to that, what you were talking about is, well, let's just see if it works. And you could have dismissed this curriculum and said, well, it's not written for A, B, C. My kids don't fit this mold, and let's just throw that out the window. I've got to continue to search, but just trying it out and saying, wow, it's
Right.
what works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to quick respond to Lynn here. She said, I'm new here. What's the point of this conversation? So conversations in July for us are sharing the stories of our community. And so Neches is sharing her homeschool story and just things that she's learned along the way. And so we're just highlighting just that process, and her story focuses around this inclusion tornado, which now we've learned, and just as she's shared this next part of her story, is that COVID has caused this inclusion tornado in your home, and of bringing your oldest son into homeschooling that you never expected, and yet it's working.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you first started talking about that, you talked about your tornado in your house, and I thought, oh, we've got to put that title to this. So you're that started in March, April time frame, kind of.
Marchish? Yeah, I guess we've been doing this quarantine thing for
since then.
a few months now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as the lessons you've learned, is it the things that you've tried out? I'm sure you've tried out other things as well. What are some of the things that you've learned that are working well, and that you're going to be including in the fall? And some things that you said, well, we tried it, and it's probably not going to continue.
One of the things that is working is that in putting all three kids together and working with them together, they are bonding and forming a relationship with each other. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's not the ideal way to teach my kids, which makes it a tornado. Because my oldest son, my two boys are opposites in regards to sensory. So one may be auditory seeking and one is auditory defensive.
Right.
And so they usually are in different parts of the house, or one is outside, one is inside. They tend to just be on just opposite ends of wherever the other is, typically. Right. And so putting them in the same group makes it hard for me to teach, and it can make it hard for them to learn, but but they are learning. And I don't know what, I can't put my finger on what has happened, like what the magic is of putting the three kids together to learn, but that is not in any way, shape, or form what anybody would ever have suggested, ever.
Right. You wouldn't go into a public school classroom and they would suggest, oh, this child would be good learning with this one. No. And let's throw in a younger, like, kindergartner with it too.
No, never. And that's been, and so I definitely want to focus on including them, just the inclusion part of it. So I want to do more inclusion work, however I can. And that seems to be where my oldest son is learning the most, because I guess he's able, the other two are models, and then they're siblings. And so they're able to just kind of reach over and kind of help. And, and they're talking to him more, as to where before they weren't talking to him. He's functionally nonverbal. They didn't see Big Brother as somebody to talk to, but now that Big Brother has this device and he's learning to use his words, now they are going over there and talking to him or helping him find a word on his device. And it's just the neatest thing to see that I never ever thought I would see, but it's something that I've dreamed of seeing. So,
Right. Yeah.
yes, so
Yeah.
more inclusion. I don't know how that's going to work yet,
Mm-hmm.
but more inclusion for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so cool because we hold ourselves back and we hold our children back a lot of times from those difficult places.
Yes.
And yet you found yourself in a difficult place and you allowed it to happen, and what you're seeing is fruit coming out of that. And so yeah, well, let's continue talking a little bit about the sibling relationship when we come back and this inclusion, and go from there. But we're going to hear from our sponsor, and so I'm going to give Neches just a break, and we'll see you in just about a minute. So,
Okay.
All right. So this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations is sponsored by Dr. Lynn Erb, PhD. She is I'm going to bring up her information for you too. She's a psychoeducational evaluator, and her number is right there. It's 610-659-8864. And I'm going to read you just a little bit of information about her and the services that she offers. She is a partner with us at SPED Homeschool, but she provides online psychoeducational evaluations for children, adolescents, and adults. And she evaluates students from every state and many foreign countries as well. So don't feel like, well, I need to find somebody. So you can find her online, which is great. She can identify each student's strengths and weaknesses, which you're finding out in hearing our stories. That it's so important to do for your students. It's invaluable information to ensure academic and personal success. Dr. Erb tests for ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, learning disorders, processing disorders, executive functioning disorders. She designs an individual treatment plan, too, for students that is easy to follow. She uses state-of-the-art resources and instruction and knows what works. Her evaluations are thorough and easy to understand. Great for us parents. And her expertise has made it possible for many students to achieve things they never thought possible. She wants your child to be a success and provides the support that you need to make learning a positive experience. And so thank you, Dr. Lynn Erb, for sponsoring this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations. And if you do want to connect with her, her number again is 610-659-8864, and again, that's in the U.S., but again, she does evaluations around the world, so just use the United States code and connect with her. So thank you, Dr. Lynn, and we're going to bring Neches back, and we're going to continue talking about her homeschooling story. And we left off talking about the sibling relationship and this inclusion. And I remember the first time you brought that up in a conversation when we were on our special needs moms night out. And I thought, I look back, because I have two boys and a girl, kind of the same situation, and never quite looked at it that way. But, my kids have a much better tolerance for one another than they would strangers. And they are complete different than each other. But I always told them, if you can get along with one another, you can get along with anybody else in the world. So I mean, it's this training ground in your home. Yes. For your children, and that's beautiful. And just seeing where it's going. I remember you talking about this device, and how has this device now caused friction yet inclusion and all of these other things that are going on in your house.
So the device, my older son's device has been wonderful, obviously, for him. I mean, it's given him a voice. He's functionally nonverbal, but he does have some language. And so a lot of people told us that a device wasn't right for him because he does have some language. So he can say what he wants. Most of the time it is, I want hamburgers, or I want French fries. Or he'll say like the name of a TV show he wants to watch. But that's the extent of his language. I mean, he can, if you give him a flashcard, he'll tell you, he can tell you the color or what something is, but that's it. He doesn't have any more language, no more developed. But with this device, you can ask him what his name is, where he lives, what his sister's name is. He can try to formulate a sentence. And so his language is growing with the device,
Yeah.
that he doesn't have verbally. Right? Now,
Right.
my younger son, he stems off of Big Brother's device. So this is a problem because
Right.
Big Brother will say something, and then my younger son will just like crack up laughing, and he can't control himself, and it's
Right.
just so in and so when you think about like our morning time where we're sitting down and trying to do our circle time, and I'm trying to make sure that we're getting all the core words and the sight words, and we're hitting all of these things, and Big Brother is learning where they are on his device. Every
Right.
single time Big Brother touches his device, the other brother is just flying off his chair, and he just can't control himself.
Oh.
And so it was an absolute mess, and I had tried to remove him from our classroom. I had tried to have him sit down with dad and just spend some time, his dad's working from home. And it ended up becoming very distracting. Little brother would have a meltdown because he was being removed and he was missing out on things. And so then I just decided, okay, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it and just let it be. And I think too of myself as a classroom teacher. And if that were going on in my classroom, there is no way I could teach. I couldn't. I could not teach like that. But so little brother is trying to control himself. He's not very successful.
Right.
And then little sister is sitting in between them, and just like, what am I supposed to do here? But we're just going on. I'm ignoring it, so they're ignoring it too. And half the time, Big Brother will turn around and just smile at little brother who's laughing, and which they weren't. They were aware of each other before. So when I say not aware of each other, it's that they were not connecting ever.
Right. Yeah.
And so now that Big Brother will just turn around and smile at him. And then the other thing that I found was that now little brother is interested in Big Brother because of the device. So now I will find like little brother going over to Big Brother and saying things like, "Oh, well, how old are you? Or what's your name? Or what do you want for lunch?" And so he'll help him navigate to answer the question.
Right.
And then he will even advocate for Big Brother. And so if somebody asks him something, and he doesn't happen to have his Proloquo with him, little brother will say, no, he needs his words. He talks with his iPad.
Oh, wow.
And so so they are advocating for each other. They are forming this relationship that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah, that's just amazing. But we have to let it happen. And it's like you said, I have to ignore it. I have to see where this goes. And that is such a hard thing because we want to control so much. Yet when we let go of a little bit of control, that's when, I know personally, that's when the magic started happening, and because the kids started connecting. Nancy said, "I'm happy to make the show," and then she said, "It melts your heart, I bet." And Nancy. So
yes.
Yeah.
I was at the point where I did not know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to ignore it. I don't know what to do. And it's like, oh, wow, this is what happens when I ignore it. This is great.
Yep, you just got to try it. So, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So, going into the fall now, I know you've been kind of planning. I'd love for you to share your blessing story, because I think that would really bless other people.
Okay.
Just of how you were blessed, just to know that this is something I know that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Okay. So I had been sharing with, our speech therapist from time to time that I just don't know if I can do this. Am I supposed to be doing this? What are we supposed to be doing for our son? Because our big guy, he is severely impacted by autism, and I think a lot of times, um, as parents, we don't know what the next step is,
Yeah.
and then once you get to a certain point, at least for me, I start to question everything. Like by this point, we've tried all the diets and we've tried all the everythings, and we're almost afraid to try something new.
Yeah.
And so I had been having this conversation with the speech therapist, and we would have some successes, and we would have and by success for my son, it would be like he used a new word this week, and then he might not use it again, and so then we're not sure if it's real progress or not, or was it an accident? Did he accidentally push something on his Proloquo or not? And then how do I treat that? And
Right.
And so it was uncertainty. And um and then I just started kind of having this conversation with myself. Okay, well, so if I'm really going to do this, then this is what I need. And I started kind of making a checklist in my mind of all the different things that I need. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to need a curriculum like this, and I'm going to need some kind of guidance like this, and manipulatives. And I just started making a
That is
list.
such a good thing to do. Yeah.
I started making a list. And then somebody in a Facebook marketplace posted something that I thought might be good for the kids. And so I just, just like anybody else, just, added is this still available? I'm interested. And then she messaged me, and I wasn't the first person to be interested in the item either. So she messaged me and said that, asked if I was still interested because the other people hadn't responded. And I was like, yeah, I'm still interested. And she said, oh, and by the way, is there anything else you might be interested in? Because I have a lot of stuff that I want to part with. And I was like, well, yeah, sure. So I told her a little bit of our story.
Yeah.
And she had a ton of stuff. And I was shocked. She had so much stuff that would really meet our needs. And lots of just lakeshore learning manipulatives, and curriculum, and just so much stuff. And I couldn't afford that stuff. It was easily like $700 worth of material. And I told her, I was like, okay, I need to double check to make sure exactly what I want. And I can't spend more than $100. And she said, okay. And so then I told her what I wanted. I had gone through my little list, and I was like, okay, I want this, this, this. And we decided we were going to meet in a Target parking lot. And then she said, since I've been a homeschooling mom, I've always wanted to encourage other moms on this journey. And I prayed about this last night, and I just want you to know it was on my heart. And I'm just giving this to you. And she just gave me all of this, everything that had been on my checklist, every last thing that was on my checklist, she just gave to me. And I felt like, and to me, that was totally a God moment, because it was God saying, I heard your prayer, even though you didn't direct it to me. I heard it, and I filled that need, and I'm letting you know you're on the right path. Because there are so many gaps. There's so many holes. I don't know how to fill them all. And I think that, one of the biggest messages I think that I want to give other, homeschool moms or moms considering this is to have faith that your prayer is going to be answered, and have faith that God is listening, because I think that, we don't know. So many times I feel like I'm just walking around in the darkness. I don't know what's next. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And then it was just, oh wait, God heard my prayer. He heard my checklist. And he was like, check, check, check. Okay, this is what you said you needed. All right, got it. Check, 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 check. This is the person you're getting in touch with. And all of this stuff, and just, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And
oh, that's awesome. Yeah. It does. It's that trial and error. It's that walking. It's taking a step in faith and just moving forward. And I know, looking back at our 18 years of homeschooling, a lot of it's been like that. And I thought, I really thought 5 years in, I'm going to be a pro at this. And because I see all these women who've been homeschooling over 5 years and they're so confident. Well, they're confident and not knowing what they're doing and just going ahead and doing it is what I found out.
Yeah.
That they just get used to that process. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. And you just keep going forward. And you'll find you'll have everything you need for your son. And just as you've been learning, since March, that it'll all work out.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's awesome. So now, going into the fall, I know we were talking before we started this conversation that you're building some boundaries,
yes,
which I think is very healthy. So what are your boundaries for your schooling year and yourself? Good things to have.
Well, one of the things that I'm learning is that, I've put my kids first, and I put my kids before myself. And so I had not been taking care of myself, and now that is starting to catch up.
Yeah.
And so what I've been doing now is it doesn't matter what time we get up or what we're doing in the morning. It's mom is going to eat and exercise first before we start school. And I'm very much somebody who is not like that. I want to make sure that everything starts off a certain way and goes a certain way, and we do things just like so. And so, and the more time that the more time, I guess, that happens between the time that the kids wake up and the time that we start school, more stuff can go wrong.
Right. Oh, yes.
And so putting myself first isn't necessarily, I would say, like my ideal situation, but I know that if I don't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be there to take care of the kids. Yeah. And so that's what I've just been, is like, no, we are going to, no, this is what's going to happen, Neches. You're going to eat your breakfast, you're going to exercise, you're going to take care of you first, and then we'll take care of the kids. And so if that means that we're starting school at 10 or at 1 and we're doing school until 6 or 7 or 5 or whatever that is, then that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
That's okay.
That is really, really good. Yeah. It's too often. I remember when I started the support group on Facebook it was the Texas Homeschool Coalition's support group first, then turned over to SPED Homeschools. But I would ask a question about the moms, and they'd always respond for their children. And I'm thinking, that's all you're looking at is your kids. You're not even thinking about yourself. And it was just breaking my heart, because I know I've been there. I've done the same thing, wore myself into the ground. I slept only 2 hours a night and just had a breakdown. And you just can't do it. You can't keep doing it unless you have those healthy boundaries. So good for you. And yes, it's hard, because you do know what happens when chaos ensues, when you're not in control of everything happening in the morning, but yet you got to take care of yourself.
Yes. And trying to exercise to a video in the morning while one son is running in and almost knocking you over, and the other one, is upset because he needs more cereal or needs more water or something. It's just like, everybody's learning to wait right now. Everybody's learning to wait.
But you're setting a good example for your kids on how to prioritize things by just doing what you're doing. And that's a lesson in itself that you're teaching in your homeschool.
Thank you.
So bravo. All right, well, we have just about 5-10 minutes left. Is there anything else in your notes that you want to cover? I want to make sure we want to cover that before any questions that I have.
I think that we covered everything that I wanted to touch on. Oh, okay. So I will say this too. One of the things that I've done uh, is that I have found, I've messaged bloggers. I've trying to find something that would work, or I would look for a review of a certain curriculum, or I would just Google this curriculum in special needs, or this curriculum in autism, or and all this kind of research that you're doing. Most curriculum publishers, they have free samples, and so don't feel like you need to go out and
Yes.
spend a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, use that sample, see if it'll work with your situation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things don't work because I know I don't have printer access right now. But
Right.
I found an app that would allow my kids to kind of type onto the PDF,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
they're just all kinds of, you have to think a little outside of the box. And I would say message bloggers, do Google searches for
Mm-hmm.
the outside of the box idea that you have. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time you will find a blogger, or you'll find somebody wrote something, or there is something that
Right.
can help.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't be shy about messaging a person or messaging a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
because just because somebody doesn't know something doesn't mean that they don't know somebody who might be able to help, and somebody will connect
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, it's so helpful. And especially now, I'm finding with the curriculum developers, I've talked to two different companies that sold mostly to the schools, and they are hurting. Their sales are less than 50% than what they were last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they're wanting to reach out to homeschoolers. I even talked to one high-low book company, Saddleback, and they are not set up to sell to parents, but they have an email on our website that you can email and ask for special pricing for shipping, because they so much want to sell to individuals and parents, because they know that their books are good and that they just don't have the sales anymore, but they want to get their material out there. So
Interesting.
definitely be asking those questions, because yeah, I just reach out to people on social media, or wherever I see them, and say, you think a homeschool market might be good, because there's a lot of parents that need your resources. So
Yes.
that they just, a lot of them logistically are not set up to do that, but reach
Hmm.
out. They may be willing to walk into their warehouse themselves. I talked to the CEO. He was going to go pull some books for me, and just ship them to you.
Hmm.
So yeah, just ask, because it's worth it. If you have some materials that have worked for your student and you want to have them in your house, see what their pricing would be. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. It's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah, I've done that, especially for my older son.
Hmm.
There isn't a whole lot of curriculum that is AAC friendly,
Yes.
but they do have
Hmm.
it for the schools. Not a lot,
Hmm.
but there are a couple of companies that do have it for the schools, and they did not have any, or they'll have a license for the school, and they
Right.
won't have
Exactly.
anything for the parent or for an
Hmm.
individual.
Hmm.
But I just message, I'll just send them a
Hmm.
quick email and say, hey, do you have anything? And sometimes they really have a good, deep discount that is very, very parent friendly.
Awesome. Yeah, that's some really good advice. Because yeah, don't just look at homeschool curriculum, and also don't just expect, because homeschool curriculum doesn't say that they are made for a child with autism or ADHD, that it's not going to work either. It's
Right.
those free samples that you can get from all of these different publishers and curriculum developers, that's really going to tell you if it's going to work or not.
Right. And one of the things that I've done is I've used some of the free samples from these pricier AAC
Mm.
uh, curriculum that you know, I found. And then I think the latest you get I got a 30-day free sample from Readtopia. And I learned so much from that sample, so
Hmm.
much from that sample on just how to teach, because it was all scripted. And,
Right.
and so I just learned how to teach. And then once you know how to teach it, then you can
Hmm.
pick up something else. You can pick up a story, or you can pick up another piece of curriculum and go, oh, I know what to do with this,
Right.
because you just learned how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Right.
yeah, so that's
Well, and that's a
one
really
of the things
good
that I've done.
point, is so much good homeschooling is from educating yourself.
Yeah.
It's not just the curriculum's just gonna, I opened it and life is gonna be good. It's, you've got to take that time to improve yourself as an educator too.
Yeah.
And yeah, often happens alongside, and as we're just using things. That's a good, very good point. So. Yeah, well, this has been great. I've enjoyed our conversation and just hearing about your story, and I hope it's encouraged you, parents. I mean, Neches is encouraging. So just your story, and just kind of how it's evolved, and you've just let that happen instead of fighting it. And each step as homeschooling has become more and more your lifestyle, and will be going into the fall, just as you're finding those things happen. So thank you for sharing and giving us a window into your life, because it's very encouraging.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are welcome. So Neches is a part of the SPED Homeschool community, and so we I think we first connected on the Facebook group, and
Yes,
we chat a lot in the Special Needs Moms Night Out, which happens right after this broadcast live, and you can find that code in our support group on Facebook, but also in our SPED Strong Tribes on the Jump. So there's a couple different places you can find that code. But yeah, so we just love being here and encouraging parents, and we love the stories that come out of just being part of our community, and
Yes.
watching families just embrace and be empowered to homeschool. So,
Yes.
So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and I do want to thank our sponsor once again. That is Dr. Lynn Erb. She does psychoeducational evaluations, and like I said halfway through, she does them virtually, so you can connect with her wherever you live, anywhere in the world. But her number is a U.S. number, which is 610-659-8864. And SPED Homeschool is a nonprofit, so just like our sponsors this, we are also supported by viewers like you. And so you can donate with tax-deductible donation on our website. Just go to spedhomeschool.com, and that's all, we're going to find all our resources as well. So next week we are going to interview again one of our community members, and Amy is going to talk to us about how she's not a teacher, but she is her homeschool administrator. And so if you thought, you know what, I can't do this teaching thing, Amy's going to give you a little more out-of-the-box way that homeschooling might look. It's not legal in every state. I will start by saying that. But in most states, you actually can outsource your homeschooling. And that works well for some parents. And so we're going to hear about that from Amy next week. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Lynn Erb, for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, Neches,
Thank you
again for sharing your story. It's encouraging, and I'm sure it's going to bless many people if you're watching now as well as in our recording. So we'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody, and thank you again for joining us on SPED Homeschool Conversations.